name is Bayonle Arashi. I simply want to call myself a student of leadership, but I do leadership coaching. I'm a leadership coach. I'm a soccer coach. I'm a life coach. Um, I'm a father. I'm a son, and hopefully I'll be a husband again soon. I can be found on all social media platforms at Bayonle Arashi, Bayonlearashi together. I'm on all platforms. TikTok. I was just mentioning to someone earlier that if you really want to hit your target audience, you have to go find them where they are. I recently started using TikTok more because it is being used by over a billion people under the age of 21. So they are there. You need to find them there. So follow me on TikTok. I'm discussing topics that will help you. I'm sharing value, and I really hope whatever you find there is valuable to you. On Instagram, Facebook as well, Twitter, now X, the same Bayonle Arashi. In April last year, I founded a soccer non-profit project, which is also as a way of reaching out to young people, because also you have to use what you have to reach out to your people. I'm a soccer coach. I've been in soccer all my life, since 1999 to be precise. So about 25 years now that I've been in that industry. But it's a non-profit project. We are hoping to use soccer as a tool to mentor young boys, young children, but with the focus on boys more, and at-risk youth, using soccer and vocational education to inspire them to find their true purpose in life. It's less than a year. We have made some progress. We have almost 40 students right now that we have impacted. Half of those kids, they don't have their dad in their life. So we are very happy to be that first, the father figure they see, and that mentor they see first, and that they can always come to. That is my current work. I still work with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice as a correctional officer in my 6th year right now. My background was in broadcasting, soccer to be precise. I have covered two major industries in my life: broadcasting and now criminal justice. So that's a little bit about me. I'm sure we're going to share more along the line.
First and foremost, welcome back and thank you for that introduction. One thing that you mentioned that I wanted to focus on and highlight in the beginning of this is you mentioned that meeting people where they are. And I think many times that's what we want to do, especially if we're going to speak to people about the absence of fathers there. Growing up as a child, sports was a big part of my life, especially if, considering that I grew up without my mother and my father, and I would
Hmm.
look to the coaches as a father figure, the male coaches, and I looked towards my teammates as my fellow brothers in arms. And it was like a family in that locker room setting. It was a family on the court. It was a family on the field. So speak to us about when you say that you're looking to meet people where they are, what does that mean to you?
You just confirmed part of what that is by sharing what your adolescent age was involved with, which is sports. Um, the last time you and I discussed, which is almost over a year now, or about a year, that we had our first conversation, what one of my target then was to go to schools and talk to the school leadership on talking to the young kids, letting them understand the importance of um, finding a purpose very early on in life. I did that for a couple of times, but many schools that I wrote to never got back to me. But I started looking further inward. I don't know, but for me, I just feel it's a calling. I just started looking more inward, like how else can I reach these people, these folks that I know need something. They're looking for someone. All you have to do is to look at social media, look at the popular social media pages, and look at the things that attract these people, and look at how much of mental degeneration that they are going through. You can see from what they type, from how they comment, from the things they do. So I started thinking. So I went to the convention. I'm a member of United Soccer Coaches Convention. Is the biggest soccer organization in the United States. I went to the convention last year. It was held in Philadelphia, and that was when I actually had a moment of epiphany. Like, you have been in soccer all your life. You have always looked to help people. You have a soccer project in your home country, Nigeria. What stops you from doing the same here? And for me, that was a big moment. So coming back to Houston a few weeks after, I went on to register the soccer academy. I've actually registered it ahead of our last meeting, but I did not do anything about it. So I said we have to start. So on April the 1st, we decided to launch out and start sharing our vision. And a couple of people that heard about it were like, yes, we need this. Because just take a look at the statistics, look at what an average 13-year-old does after school. Literally nothing. What they do is they sit on their game or behind their TV and just play away, just be in that world, which is what I call it. And it does not bring anything positive to them. You can only do that for so long. As a child growing up, you need a mixture of everything. It does not mean that you can't give them some chance to socialize with games, but they have to do real life. They need mentoring, and that is what inspired that quote that I said earlier, that you have to meet the kids where they are by starting something that will attract them. So we have a couple of teenagers right now that comes and they exhaust themselves twice a week that we train for now. And the vision is very big. The vision is big. The image behind me, I hope people can be able to see this. That's the vision right there. That's what we hope to build in the nearest future. We're going to have our own facility where we're going to have teenagers ages 13, and then they're going to come into the academy, 120 boys. Hopefully, that's our plan. We're going to be in there for 5 years, being poured into, poured into them physically, spiritually, mentally, and of course, developing a skill set. So when you're coming out of that soccer academy after 5 years, by the time you're going to turn 18 or after your 18th birthday, you're either going to become a professional soccer player, or you are going to college to further your education, or you are coming out with a license that says you have this vocation that you are going to use to add value to the society. That's what Midas Football Academy aims to do. And we're going to do that for as long as I have strength to continue to work. So that's the vision. And that's why we are meeting them where they are.
I think that's a fantastic bridge from the education system that many youth go through. And you have a bridge from when the school ends to when they fall asleep, or maybe
You go to
towards the
bed.
night, because that's the best part. Because I think one thing that happens, at least from my experience in my childhood, was school would end at 4 p.m. and from 4 p.m. to about 8, idle time. And there's that beautiful saying, right? Idle hands is the devil's playground, the workshop, right? So for
Absolutely.
you, you're making a conscious effort to say, hey, I want to meet you where you are. I want to give you resources to prevent you from either considering going down another avenue that may be detrimental to you in the
Absolutely.
present and detrimental to you into the future. So when you're getting these young adults, especially the men or the young boys, sorry, especially them who are without fathers or without that presence of a father figure around them on a consistent basis. How does that feel for you that you're stepping into that role for so many of our future young men?
That's a very deep and at the same time excellent question. I feel it's a calling because every time I try to vie away from it, because sometimes I will tell you now, because I just feel for us men too, it's okay for us to be vulnerable, but this is actually one of the most difficult things for men to do. We don't want to do that. I don't want to do it many, many times. Many times I cry, but I don't want to cry in the presence of people that will say, why is he crying now? Because some people don't think men should cry. But to answer your question, for me, I feel such a strong conviction that I did not have some of these things growing up. And one of the things that developed the conviction in me is the fact that even though my dad was present, but I left home at a very, very early age. I left home when I was 19 years old. Apparently, you would say maybe I have enough, but I had to leave. Why did I leave home? I shared that story the other time on the podcast. My dad was living a life that I was looking like, this is not how I want to live. This is not how I want to live. My dad was polygamy, was a polygamist, so to say. I see a couple of wives after my mom, and I saw the competition between my mom and those women. When I said women, not so it means they were not. It was not one of them. One will come, spend a couple of 1 or 2 years. I say I can't deal with this man's nonsense, and she will leave, and another one will come. And I saw this for a couple of years, and I just told myself, no, I am not going to do this. And that was what made me to say, you know what, I'm going to get out of this place. And when I was living that time, because at 19, what do you know? And I'm saying this to a lot of people. You probably think you know a lot, but you don't know nothing at the age of 19. You don't know the world that is waiting for you out there. But for me, what saved me was those little support and education and discipline that I got in those 19 years that I stayed with my parents. So when I branched out, I continued on that path. And I've said this before, books helped save my life. I will always say it. I read books, and I think I also use that word more now. I also filter my mind. Whatever I think is not right, I don't do. Whatever I think I shouldn't go, I don't go. So I did growing up and seeing how through the inspiration of God, because if I said it was me, I would be a liar. Through books that I was mentored by, through me meeting Christ at the age of 28, which I think was the biggest change of all for me. I decided to say there are many men, many boys like me out there that are in the same place I was, and they need help. How do I reach out to these guys? Because it's a different thing for you to reach out, and it's another thing for them to be willing to accept your hand of gesture. Like, okay, what is he telling us? So, how to reach out and the continuous development on my path to be able to help these young men is what made me to continue doing this. And as part of what we plan to do with my nonprofit, yes, we're going to have 120 boys at the academy, but I mean, out of millions of them out there, 120 of them is not just enough. So I know some people might want to ask. So we go beyond that. We have two programs also. We call one Rising Stars. Rising Stars is basically a mentoring program, which is going to be monthly. So from January to December of every year, we're going to have 12 Rising Star sessions. And what that entails is we're going to have a group of young men. If you're ages 13 and 18, you play sport, or you are a young man or a young woman, and you are looking for mentoring, you are looking for resource, we're going to offer you the opportunity to, we're going to be in a hall, all of us together. Bring a resource person. It could be me, it could be you, it could be someone doing something positive in their life, to come and share what it means to be an adult with you, for you to understand that life does not happen on a fast lane, for you to understand that there is a time to plant and there's a time to reap, that you cannot be born today and tomorrow you start crawling or walking, that everything is a process, that you are not a failure, that because your father is not in your life does not mean you cannot make it. So this is going to be one of our outreach programs. So we're going to be doing that as part of our development. The second one is Crossing Bridges, and that happens to be the name of my podcast before. Crossing Bridges is our second outreach program, which is going to be by month, every other month, every 3 months. That means we're going to have four of it in a year. And this one means we're going to go to underserved environment. There are many of them in Houston. There are many of them in state of Texas. We're going to go to that environment. We're going to organize a day tournament. We're going to ask moms that are raising young boys, single moms, single parents, come out, bring the kids out. Come and let them hear from us. Bring them to an atmosphere of event and tournament. They're going to play soccer. We're still going to give them soccer balls. And at the end of the day, we hope to appreciate the moms, the dads for doing the job they are doing. So we are hoping that through these two outreach programs, we can reach hundreds, thousands, and hopefully millions in the nearest future.
The outreach programs here in Canada, I remember using some of them. We used to call this place called, we used to call it the community center, and we used to play basketball there. We played indoor soccer, we played dodgeball, we played a number of beautiful, beautiful sports. And one thing that I always loved is that you had people around you cheering you on, even though some of them probably didn't even remember your name. But the emotions and the family atmosphere surrounding those young men and women was something that would always be a part of my memory, and it was absolutely fantastic. And as I look back on on my journey, when you're saying that, I remember the impact that some of these outreach programs had, and you would bring people together from all over the city for a common cause. And it was like you were building a community within a community. I remember
Absolutely.
6 p.m., you knew you had a soccer practice or baseball practice. By 5 p.m., you're so excited. Like, okay,
To
you're
go.
getting ready to go, right? Because you knew that coach was going to
It's
be
gonna be
there,
there.
and right. And the level of respect that you had for that person and the conversation was something that I think in a way is kind of missing today, where mentorship used to be something that you can find almost anywhere. You found it at your job, you found it at your church, your mosque, your synagogue, you found it
Around
in your
you.
neighborhood, right? Especially your neighborhood, because growing up, I remember the neighborhood, the staples of the neighborhood was always the community center where you had mentors working there and some type of religious atmosphere. It could have been church,
Yeah.
it could have been a mosque, whatever the case is. Now, as the cities get bigger, and now as we start to live further and further away from the heart of some of these things, you see sometimes kids getting lost. And the parents, for the most part, are trying their best to do what they can, but they're working longer hours, they're working longer days. And maybe there's times where they can't give what they know they're supposed to give, but they're giving just a bare minimum in and hoping that their children will be okay.
Hmm.
When you see these children come to you and the children that you work with, and they leave with such a fantastic feeling afterwards. But then sometimes there's always maybe that one child, that few children that they don't necessarily want to leave because they know that once they step through those doors, it's
Going
back
back to
to
the life.
reality. How do you deal with that?
That's that's a very tough question. And yes, we have a couple of them, and it's. I was just talking to someone I care about a lot about few months ago before I coming on this show that I said, sometimes when I go dark, um, it's not because I don't love you, right? And she said, yeah, I know. I said, it's because I just think about this the amount of people, and that is just in the present, that depends on me, that depends on my smile, that depends on that depends on when they see you, they believe, yes, today's going to be a good day. And sometimes, like you just said again about parents being tired, I'm not just there because I'm human, right? But I also know that no matter how tired I am, some people are always dependent on me. So, how do I handle such a situation as you mentioned now? It's by continuing to go, by continuing to ask for strength from the Creator. Like, God, keep giving me strength, but continue to do the bare minimum that you can every day, and knowing that at the end of this race, it is not the amount of vehicle that I have. It is not the amount of houses that I built. It is not the amount of friends that I make. It is the amount of people that can remember me. I will say, "Oh, Coach Bayo did this for me." For me, I think that's the most important thing that I want anyone to remember me for, because I still go back to what I said again, the people that mentored me through their works. I never met Dr. Miles Monroe, but that for me, that was, I always say, that was the father I never had. I never met him. He's passed, but I listened to thousands of hours, and I don't think it's exaggerated, of his works. I read his books, and he just talks about what it means to be. He taught me more about being a man than my own father did, right? And that's what it means to be a mentor. Jim Rohn, I never met him, but his work teaches you, their lessons are very basic, but there are things that will move your life towards the direction you want it to go. So when you see those guys that lived like that, they are like, and they've been gone 10, 15, 20 years ago, and their work still makes meaning till date. I want to live like that too. And hopefully maybe I can better that. So I hope that answers the question.
It does. And my follow-up question would be, would you want to meet any of your mentors that you just mentioned? And if so, what would you say to them?
Wow, definitely I would love to meet them. Absolutely. I would love to meet them because if they can tell you that much through camera and a microphone, and through their oratory skill, I mean, imagine what their presence would do for you. But I can tell you this, as a person that is that uses subconscious a lot, because one of my yearly read, which I fortunately finished reading just 3 days ago, is the book called Think and Grow Rich. I'm sure you must have read it. If you have not, I would definitely urge you to. I read that book every year. It's always my first read of the year. There's a particular chapter in there that Dr. Napoleon Hill normally use. He called them his masterminds, where he will, in his imaginary act, call the people that believe he's his mentors, past presidents, past poets, past stoic people, and he will have a meeting with them, an imaginary meeting, and he will ask them for each of their gifts for them to continue to inspire him. I do the same. I do the same. During my run, during my workout, during my alone time, I just like, these guys said this thing they have, because you just imagine when you listen to some of their messages, like, how did these guys come across such a wisdom? And they would still tell you, they would say it's in books, it's in the Bible. So when they give you all this little information and you don't want to do the work, I mean, that's on you. So definitely I would love to meet. And if I do meet them, I would just say thank you. Thank you for your work, for helping us, because their work still helps. Maybe later on there was a book, there's a book I was reading that I just finished, by David Blankenhorn. Is called The Fatherless America. There are some statistics in that book that was written in 1995, and everything he said in 1995 has almost quadrupled in 2024 that we're talking right now. So it just further confirms the importance of having mentors, reading books, and following the pattern of the people that have lived the kind of life you want to live.
I recently read an article, because when you mentioned The Fatherless America, I think that's actually on my next, one of my books that's next on my reading list. And some of the things that it mentioned, if I remember correctly, was definitely the impact of the absence of the father in the household, and how what they represent to the children. And sometimes we seem to forget that, because someone will say something along the lines, well, I didn't have my mother, I didn't have my father, but I'm still all right. Well, you're all
Hmm.
right relative to you, but when you're compare, or when you look at your life and you compare the average life of someone that had both parents in the household, there is a difference. And
Absolutely.
some people
Every
think
time.
that every time, right? So some people think that, well, I'm good enough. It's not a matter of you being good enough. It's just the numbers would tell you that if you do take the average person, everything else considered, and if you put them in a household with one parent versus both parents, the one in both parents will be nurtured and be grown in a different way than the one who has one parent. That doesn't mean the person is bad or not good. It just means it's different, and you have less opportunity provided to succeed. And when it comes to the fathers in the household, we are the ones that motivate in a different way. We put our children we give our children a different perspective than, let's say, for example, the mothers who are more nurturing, who are looking to inspire and say, okay, you can do it. With the fathers, okay, you want to get this done, what's the plan, what's the deadline? It's very to the book, right? And it's very organized in that way. And I'm glad that you highlight the importance of increasing your knowledge. There are sometimes we can get stuck in our own echo chamber and think that I'm perfect just the way that I am, even though we have chaos around us, because we can't see the trees from the forest or the forest from the trees. So when you speak to when you spoke on that, the importance of your mentors, meeting them, and some of the sources that you get your information from, your knowledge from, and some of the other resources you've used to grow into the man that you are. How important is it for men to understand that there is more out there? Let's go out there and obtain more and become a better positive man.
It's very important. It's actually a no-brainer. It has to be a continuous work, and that was why I said earlier when I was sharing the vision of the academy that this is something I definitely want to do for the rest of my life. Personally, with my full-time job in the corrections with the Department of Criminal Justice, I've been tired. I've been done with the job, but every time I still want to go, but every time I'm going back, I'll still be like, there are still some inmates out there, believe it or not, that are behind the bars, that are behind the walls, that only when they see you come to work, just like what you said about a kid that is going back to a reality, when some inmates see me at work and see some other folks at work, they feel it's going to be a good day. I've actually had inmates say this before. And what this tells me is I must be doing something right. And I'm not saying this to brag or anything to say I'm a perfect man. No, but it just tells me something that this assignment, this calling that you have to continue to develop it, to share it. And how can we continue to let other men know that lifelong learning is something that they have to imbibe, is something that they have to consistently chase, is to continue to be that example. We have to continue to set the example. You mentioned that Fatherless America is going to be your next book, your next read. I can tell you, you're not going to regret it. And I'm going to give you some of the stats that he gave there. One of them only. In 1995, when John Blankenhorn wrote that book, he said about 40% of American kids in 1995, about 40% do not live under the same roof with their fathers. In 1995, today, I can confirm to you, and this is not an official statistics, but all it takes for you to find out is go out, talk to 10 women, or to talk to 10 young boys. Where is daddy? Are you going to find out? Today, about 3 out of 10 kids, 3 out of 10 are growing up in a two-parent household today. So what does that tell you? That what John said in 1995 is coming to pass, and it has gotten worse, way worse. And what is responsible for this? There is a lot more responsible for it then, because sometimes when we drop these statistics, it's not just for us to scare people. You have to look further into it. What is responsible for it? You mentioned one earlier. We work too much. I was glad that I came to America when I was 34 years old. So I have worked as a professional in a different environment. I have seen that there is a difference between work and life balance. In America, you barely have anything called that. If you want to live a decent life, so the dad and mom has gone to work. Minimum they do a day is 10 hours. That would be your minimum. Some work 16 hours. I work about 18 hours a day because I work 8 hours my regular job and I put 9 to 10 in my personal business, because that's what one of my mentors said. Jim Ron, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. That's one of the biggest secrets of life. You want to make a difference, you want to be better than your peers, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. For me, that's my mantra. I don't know about anybody else, but that's one of the reasons why America is where it is today. People work themselves to debt. Sometimes to even afford to buy things they cannot afford. Like you want to drive a 2024 model car, your friend just bought a big house of $500,000. You want to compete, or as an immigrant, you have a bunch of people at home that are dependent on you, which I'm also one of. Mom is expecting their pay, dad is expecting, your siblings, your friends, your family, your in laws, your kids sometimes. You have to provide for these people. So when you come back home, the kid that you raised sometimes wants your attention. You are too tired. You can't give them this attention. And this happens for 5, 10. By the time the kid is 13, 14 years old, he or she no longer depends on you anymore because you were never there anyway. Some of us try to compensate our kid once every 2 or 3 years by taking them to Disneyland or Disney World, and think that will probably take away those everyday moments that they want to spend with us. So there is more that contributes to this. And the second one is the systemic division of, okay, a man and a woman have marriage, and something happens between the two of them, and if they are not spiritually cautious, they said, okay, everybody's going this way, we're going to get divorced. Okay, we go to the court of law. The court says, okay, husband, you've worked all your life, you are a millionaire, everything you have, you're gonna divide it to two. Wife takes half, husband takes half. And sometimes some men cannot move on from that. It leads to many other things. So there are so many contributing factors to the fatherlessness issue. So I just think it goes back to you being a man, you as a man having the basic foundation that, okay, the number one thing in my life should be my spiritual practice. Am I a Muslim? Am I a Christian? So if either that you are, which of the God are you calling? Are you calling on Allah, or are you calling on Jesus Christ, or whatever religion you have? But you must have a spiritual practice. That is the number one guide of your life. You must constantly and continuously invest in self-development. It is a no-brainer. You have to continuously develop yourself, because the social media will not teach you nothing. I don't watch TV. I always say to people, I watch 30 minutes every day, and I watch news. That's but I know that in that 30 minutes news I'm gonna watch is gonna scare the living day out of me, because everything they would tell me in that 30 minutes is everything wrong with America. Nobody looks at someone like us building an infrastructure, an academy that will help young people. Nobody looking at other people doing great projects out there. They're going to look at a young boy that shot somebody in a gas station, an accident that happened on I-45. That's all you see. So you have to like take yourself away from that and have a self-development plan. And thirdly, you must have a purpose. What are you growing towards? What are you chasing? Because life is binary. It is either you are on the offense or you're on defense. That's what it is. There's no three-way ground. You are either attacking or something is attacking you. That's the little I can share at the moment as we go further.
No, but I'm going to go further because one thing I want to say is this is where I push back on the men and women in this dynamic. I always say that the 70s and 80s, those who grew up in it, their mindset was a little bit different. Their mentality was more family oriented. Whereas the children that they gave birth to, many of them, what they saw something that they didn't want to be a part of. They would look at who we call Big Mama or grandfather's house. They'd look at them and say that this is not the life that I want. I want more. And you had this incredible influx of people into the education system, especially college university during the 90s and the 2000s, because they didn't want necessarily to be a factory worker or something along those lines, like many of their parents were who immigrated, let's say, for example, to the United States or to Canada or wherever. And when I mentioned that, I'm going to push back because you highlighted the purpose. If you look at it from a woman's perspective, if they can have a child and sustain that child without the man in that house. There's going to be a group of women that's going to do that because they can supplement their income either through spousal support, child support, or government assistance. The man
Mm.
isn't mandatory for them to help take care of the child like it was maybe in the 60s and 70s where you needed the income from the man. Now, when you flash forward, you'll get it from a man's perspective. There, many of them are thinking, why should I invest in a woman this way, a marriage, so on and so forth, when I can get the sex and the kid without providing the ring,
Absolutely.
right? So you have these two dynamics who unfortunately started off as maybe a minority, but a very loud and vocal minority. And now they're influencing those who are in the middle who are maybe thinking, hmm, okay, I want to have a family, but I don't necessarily need to have a marriage like my grandparents did it. So why don't I go down that route? Because you see Susie down the street who's having hot girl summer every other day. She's
Mm.
living the time of her life, going on vacation, going wherever. And I don't know if I necessarily want to do that because you still gonna have the traditional men, you still gonna have the traditional women who are putting themselves in a position that in their mid to late 20s, they know that they want to build this family and create the legacy. Whereas you have these other people who are just living life very dopamine based, where they're just looking for the next hit. And I think,
Mm.
unfortunately, to your point, we've kind of got lost in that because on social media and on the news, as you mentioned, they glorify this. I couldn't remember the last time where on social media I saw something go viral where you had two people who got married and they're happily getting married and they have the festivities and things like that. Unless you go searching for it, it's not on the news. It's mostly this person died, this person got shot, this person is suffering these injuries, but you don't have the positivity like you maybe did in the 80s and 90s where you'd see stories of someone saving others or at least creating a family. So how do you help others try to navigate through that? Because it might be hard to tell someone, hey, be like me, just only watch 30 minutes of TV.
No, I don't think it's something you can teach really. What you can do, which I'm also going to give credit to one of my role models, one of my mentors. He's still alive, thank God. That's in person of Tony Robbins. Um, I listened to. I was fortunate to be in his presence. Sometimes March of last year, it was actually a total shock at an event, a leadership event in Miami, and he shared something in his book, Life Force. I think that's his latest book, and I wrote it down. I'm going to share two of them with you. He said the world has been the same over the last 100 years. He said, but a couple of things, a couple of dynamics have been consistent. And he said, if you want to observe those dynamics, you have to first study pattern. You have said everything about the pattern now. In 60s, 70s, marriage was the norm. You have to be married. You have to have a kid. The man goes out to work. The woman stays home, raise the kids. The man provides the food. The woman makes the food, have the baby, raise the kids. Kids go ahead and repeat the process. And he said it changes again because if you study the pattern, then you have to use the pattern. Now, when you use the pattern, and that's where we are right now. You first study the pattern and see that things are like this, and then you use the pattern, and that's what people are doing right now. Like now, women have since the World War II. I wasn't born by World War II. I was born in 1980, which makes me sometimes feel old as well, because when I see what the kids born in the 2000s do and say and act these days, I'm in shock. Like I'm just like, am I? Are we still in the same world? you know, because things have really, really, really changed. There's no, the basic tenet of respect is no longer there. That you see people, you say, I still use sir, ma'am for, I don't care how old you are. Everybody is yes, ma'am, yes, sir. That's how I was brought up. Sometimes when I say it to some women, they are offended. They're like, why are you calling me ma'am? Am I that old? And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. That is not my intention. I'm just respecting you. So you have to. And my other mentor, Dr. Miles Monroe, said the World War II changed everything because those days when the man goes out and work and come back and take care of the family changed because the men went to war during the World War II, and there were some of them were stuck out there because their bullets and guns were exhausted. So the government, the American government, had to go call on the women in the house, like, "Hey, you want to make some money? Come and make the weapons." So the women were in the factories making the weapon, making the bullets for the soldiers at war, for their husbands at war to use, and they were already making some money. So by the time the men came back from war, the one that survived it, their wives were back in the factory working. She could supply her own bacon and her own, she could buy her own gas, she could buy her own everything that time. And the man was like, hey, what's going on here? And the wife is, look, this is the new reality. We have to do it that way. And some men accepted, and since then, it did not change. It kept going worse and worse. And now, like you said, a few of them then started mentoring the larger audience. They were infiltrated, and then now we have a gazillion of them out there that said, okay, look, if your husband is giving you this, don't take it. Before, my parents only divorced because I don't know if it's something that they'll probably want to share, but I don't think they could go ahead with themselves anymore. But they could have actually made it work. And I told myself that, hey, look, if I get married, whatever it takes, I'm not going to get divorced. It's never going to happen. That was something I told myself. But believe it or not, I think I survived just 14 years of that. Uh, it happened as much as, and I always say it, I had a fight of my life for my marriage. Like, no, I'm not going to get divorced. I'm not going to repeat the cycle. Guess what? It happened. I'm not blaming me, and I'm not going to blame her. I just think it's part of the pattern that I mentioned earlier, that when life cycle turns, it is what it is. It's your turn. But most of the time, you have to trace this thing down to the importance of the fact that it is a pattern that continues to revolve, and that's how it's going to be. So it is left for you and I to continue in our own little capacity to say, okay, are we willing to give marriage a chance again? Are we willing to raise the kind of men that we want to be? Because our father make a mistake does not mean that we have to let the pattern repeat itself. Are we willing to fix it? Some will say, okay, yes, I want to. Some will be like, hell nah. Whatever will be, will be. They will be like, let my son do whatever he wants to do. Me, I don't want my son to repeat the cycle. I want my son to be better. And I want other sons that come out of me in faith, in mentoring, to be better than I am, to remember me, to say, hey, that man helped me. So you can only do what you can do, and you controlling your controllables. And I think that's the most important point of all of them. Controlling what you can control. The ones you cannot control, just let it be.
I agree. And I think a lot of men these days fall into that trap. They want to control and in a way molds the personality of the person that they're with instead of finding someone that's going to fit into the type of personality that they want. So for example, we have a lot of men that will say that these are the type of I don't want a woman that is, let's say, over 40, that has a child, that is whatever, right? They make up all these things they have all these preferences, and I always tell them your preference is your prison. It doesn't liberate you, it just entraps you.
Hmm.
And I tell them these things. And when I listen to them, I say, okay, fine. Everyone has a preference. You know, there's some women out there who have to be 6 feet tall, 6 inches, and six figures. Everyone has their preference. But what I tell them is, or what I ask them is this: are you actively searching for the person that meets that? Or are you dating people and hoping to turn them into that?
Hmm.
Because those are two different things. And this goes back to the women now, to the women who are listening. There's men out there who you know, that me and Bayonle know deep in their soul, they have no business even being in a father type situation or even having a conversation about being a father. But sometimes women will put themselves in a situation to make that person a father, knowing that they shouldn't be. And there's times where men out there will put a woman in a situation to become a mother when they
Hmm.
know that they shouldn't be. And I think that's where the struggle is that instead of thinking long term, as you're alluding to, and understanding what the pattern from the past says, because we can't go anywhere, we can't drive anywhere if we don't know where we're going to go. If we don't know the
Hmm.
destination, if we don't know what our prior history or the pattern has outlined for us, we're just driving blindly. And I think that's what is important about understanding, okay, my grandparents were like this. My observation, this is something that I want to tweak a little bit. My parents were like this. They had the same thing that my grandparents had. Let me stop it with me. But sometimes we just think that we're better because we're just more educated. We spent more time in school instead of looking back and saying, hey, I've identified the pattern. I want to break it. What are your thoughts?
Hey, I mean, you just probably like say it better than I hope I can add anything to that. It's just the reality of things, and it's our responsibility to make sure that the lessons that we have learned and that we are learning real time, because some of these lessons are not something we are prepared for. Nobody prepared us for it. I will also reference, because of the point I made now, a book by John Eldridge. I'm trying to remember the title. Uh, I have it here, Wild at Heart. That's the title. I have my books right here, so I could look, and I would recommend that book to you as well. He said, without no manual, without no preparation, a man is set on a journey of life. And the only way he figures a lot of things out is by making sure he goes through it by himself. So, most of the things you are going to learn, you can only learn them by experiencing them. But sometimes you are helped spiritually or by by some divine power due to listening to a conversation like this, remaining curious, remaining open-minded, continuously learn from people, from father figures, and making sure that you balance the presence, because even though we are born, we are older now, we still have to recognize that artificial intelligence is in existence, is going to come. You better use it or it's going to take you out of it. So mix the current with the past to be able to navigate the presence. And that's just what I can add to that. Before I'll probably share my part in short, I believe.
Perfect. So, as you're adding to that, there's one thing I want to ask you as we're looking to close is what is your 5 year plan, or what does a future hold for you and the work that you want to do with the young men growing up into a society that is different when you and I were growing up into it and continues to be different into the future?
Hmm. Beautiful 5 year plan. Uh, my 5 year plan is very simple. I hope in 5 years, the football academy project continue to grow, that we have God willing, have our facility built, because I believe that will help a lot when you're not worried about, oh, how are we going to train today? How are we going to pay for this facility? How are we going to get those boys? Because sometimes you don't envisage some of these things that happen, but they do happen. So I hope that the facility will be built. I hope that we will have helped a couple of young men to graduate from the academy. I hope my first daughter will have had a master's degree and be ready to be a wife. Hopefully, she's going to be 19 in the next few days. So, in 5 years, she will be 24. And that my son continue to grow into being a better young man that will be a positive force among his peers. And I hope to continue personally in my own self development journey and to have a bigger platform where I can travel across this country, United States, overseas, and share true life experience with other young men in the hope that they will go ahead to also share the message, making them to know that number one, there is a very it's very important for them to find a purpose. And you might be asking again, this man keep talking about purpose, 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 purpose. How do I find my purpose? It's very easy. You find it through reading books, you find it through asking questions continuously, you find it through mentors, and you find it by remaining curious. Secondly, for every young man out there to have this basic understanding that they are in a battle, you are in a fight. It is a world of evil versus good. Either you like it or not, some of your peers, some the other sex, the women are going to see the negative side of you, for you to understand that evil exists and that you have to continue to make right choices to be able to avoid those goods. Do not go ahead and test that new drugs, or let friend encourage you to let's go and bust that gas station, or let's go and jack that woman's purse or wallet, or let's go and rob that man from the money he just took from ATM. That is going to end either putting you in a morgue or putting you behind the walls. And for you to know that transformation requires sacrifice. If you are a man, you have to be is of certain characteristics. Forgive me. You have to be healthy. You have to be fit. You have to be sound in your head. So, and for you to have those three tenets, it takes sacrifice. For you to be healthy and fit, you have to know you're going to work out. You're going to go to the gym, lift weight, find a track and start running for your own health and for your mental health. If you want to be brilliant in your brain, to have a word to share every time somebody asks you a question, you have to go get books. There is a thrift store for books that you can get a book for $5. And the best of them all is Think and Grow Rich. Find a book is the best book on mindset. Find a book to read on diet. Find a book to read on investment. And the one I would recommend to you is The Richest Man in Babylon. Read that and find one on diet as well. There are many of them out there. And final but not the least, that a man should not and never seek validation from women. A woman can never validate you. You cannot be validated by a woman. Your mom will do some work, but the best validation you can get, number one, is from your creator, your God, and your mentors, people that look like you. Your father, if you have a father, God bless him. If you don't, find a father figure, find a mentor, and continue to grow.